I stand out here in the wonders of the unknown at Hadley, I try to realize there's a fundamental truth to our nature. Man must explore. And this is exploration at its greatest.
Once upon a time, there were two guys. Let's call them Ryan and Wayne, working in a SOC. Even on good days, the work was hard, even tedious. Ryan and Wayne were frustrated. Indicators were coming from everywhere. There was no centralized repository for data, too many disparate systems. Teams were not working together. There had to be a better way. So Ryan and Wayne searched for a solution, but they couldn't find anything on the market to make their jobs easier. So they decided to build the solution themselves, something to make SOC, threat analysts, and incident responders more efficient and effective, to help CISOs communicate better with the executive team and get more from their existing security investments. It was a lot of work, so they quit their jobs, founded ThreatQuotient, and built the ThreatQ platform. Their approach? Start with the right data. Confidence in the data means confidence in decision-making. And confident decision-making means actions can be automated. How does ThreatQ do this? We take a threat-centric approach that's about relevant, actionable intelligence, prioritized information to reduce the noise, collaboration using tools and processes you know, balancing human intelligence with automation, accelerating detection and response. All this means that teams operate more efficiently and effectively, and CISOs can shift from the what to the why, building trust and showing value. Ryan and Wayne were right. There is a better way. To learn more, go to ThreatQuotient.com.
And you can learn more with ThreatQuotient right here. Well, not right here, actually, from Germany. Markus Auer, welcome to the studio.
Hello, Chris. This is your captain speaking. How are you?
Yeah, we're fine. You're looking good. You're looking as if you're flying there yourself, actually.
Yeah,
I get the glasses, the whole bit, you know.
He looks like the Maverick grew a beard. No?
Really cool,
Yeah,
Markus.
maybe one day you get one. Welcome. Hey, how are you?
We're good. We're having a good morning. We've had a good morning.
Excellent.
We've had some lunch. We're ready to go. We're all sort of enthusiastic about what's going on. So we've got a little piece of music to go with this, haven't we? Very nice. That sort of
brilliant.
really paints the picture, doesn't it, Markus?
Absolutely, absolutely. But give me 1 second. I need to change my glasses.
Really?
Because otherwise,
Okay, you mean you can't see anything with them on?
I just see you blurred, and that's the reason why I probably did not become a fighter
Who
pilot.
let you in the fighter jet then with those glasses? Come on.
Yeah. Maybe it would be better that you see me blurred. I think it's perfectly all right as it was. I think we go straight onto it, but you've got some, lots of stuff. You've got some comments for this young man?
Well, not anymore. I told him everything. I think his topic is right on, as the movie, as the technology, as the person. So I think the only thing we need to do is, Markus, do you feel the need?
I feel the need for speed.
Wow, go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I am really sad I can't see you all in person. I bought this flight suit to be up at stage at risk. So we need to do that virtually, which is sad, but I'm really hoping we can do that next year. So What I want to talk today about is obviously cyber threat intelligence, but I want to take the topic from a bit of a different angle. Because when we think of cyber threat intelligence, most of us think of data, of IOCs, IP addresses, hash values, et cetera. But from a ThreatQuotient perspective, cyber threat intelligence is much more. It is a holistic practice that brings three things together, which are people, processes, and technology. And this is what I want to talk today about. So before we get started, let's enter, as before of every mission, enter the briefing room or the agenda. So a lot of you might question, why Top Gun? What does that have to do with Top Gun? So I'm going to talk about that. We will talk about a process that's known as the Ooda Loop. I will go a bit into the data because data is important, but I will talk about the difference between threat data and threat intelligence. We will talk about some of the challenges, why cyber threat intelligence is still not commonly used in companies. And then, obviously, as you saw in the introduction, we will talk about the platform that could help us get more value out of threat intelligence and turn it into a holistic practice. So let's start. Why Top Gun? Now, I, as probably many of you, have heard the name or the expression Top Gun, David, as you said, from the 86 movie Top Gun together with Tom Cruise. But actually, Top Gun has a general meaning. And this is what you see here. So it's a kind of slang word, and it means in general a person who is the best of the best in a particular field, in a particular practice, right? The top ranked person in a group. That's a general meaning, and especially Americans are using Top Gun everywhere. But on the other side, it is obviously directly referred to ace fighter pilots. And I want to introduce you to one of these aces today, which is Colonel John Richard Boyd. Now, who was Boyd? He was a US Air Force fighter pilot. He was a military strategist, and he also was an instructor. And his mission was to train the best of the best pilots to even become better and ultimately become Top Gun. And that's where the movie came from. And in order to accomplish his mission, he thought of a new and more structured way to train his pilots and came up with a process that became known as the Ooda Loop. So the Ooda Loop is a process that consists of 4 parts, which is observe, orient, decide, and act, right? So let's take a bit of a closer look. What does this process actually mean from a pilot's perspective? So we start with the observe part. And observation, as the name says, this is the phase of information gathering, right? This is where the pilot gathers information from various sources in a combat situation. He gets visuals, where is the enemy, what are the weather conditions, where are the clouds, where are the sun. He gets telemetry data from his plane. He gets information from his co-pilot, his wingman, maybe some information from the base. And this is where he gets all the information together in a first step. So once he has enough information, he feeds that information forward to the second phase, which is orient. And in that phase, he is combining the newly gathered information with information from the past, his past experiences, and we'll talk about that later on, and also generic information. So he's doing an analysis, he's doing the data processing. And once he has done that, he enters the third phase, which is decide. And this is where the pilot makes the decision, what to do in that certain situation. Is it an evasive flight, or is it about attacking the enemy? This is where the decision is made. And the last part is the action. This is where he actually executes what was defined in the decision-making process. So these are the 4 steps, but what we don't have so far is we don't have a loop. And this is very important from a pilot's perspective. Very important is the feedback. So what he always does is he feeds the outcome of an action as new information back into the observation process. And this is a very, very important part because every action changes the circumstances. It's new information that needs to be fed, and then he goes again through this loop again and again. And the second thing, what he does is this information, this outcome, this lesson learned is fed back into his knowledge base of past experiences. So he can always refer back, what did I do in that certain situation? So this is the Ooda loop in a bit more detail. And Boyd said, if you get through this loop faster than your enemy, you will win. I guarantee you. If the enemy does, you will lose. Full stop. So let's talk a bit about data before we go into the cyber threat intelligence topic in detail, because data is the foundation. It's the foundation for pilots on the one side to make decision, and it's also the foundation for security teams. But there is a difference between threat data and threat intelligence. So what actually turns threat data into threat intelligence? What is what we call the art? There are three factors that you need to look at. The first one is accuracy. So the data you have must come from a reliable source. You must be able to trust the information. It must be detailed enough, and it must come with enough context to understand what the information actually is. The second one is relevance. So the question is, does this information apply to my current mission, to my business, or to my network? Is it relevant for me or not? And the third one is timeliness. So the data must come in a timely manner, so you have enough time to make a decision. If you have these three components, you are actionable. You can act on threat data, and that actually turns threat data into threat intelligence. The problem is, if you are missing one of these components, you can't act. Why? If the data is relevant and comes in timely, but it's not accurate, you will derive the false decision. And that, from pilot's perspective, that could be lethal, right? If the data is accurate and timely, but it's not relevant, well, you are just wasting your time. And if the data is accurate and relevant, but doesn't come in timely, well, you simply don't have enough time to act on it. So these are the three factors that turns data into threat intelligence. So in the briefing room, I said there are a couple of challenges, and cyber threat intelligence is around since decades already. But actually, when I'm talking to security people and companies, some are using, threat data in the form of a feed, but there are a couple of challenges and a couple of hurdles, and most of the companies do not get the full value out of cyber threat intelligence. So why is that? Let's go back into the pilot situation in a combat situation. And what's the advantage of a pilot? So what does he have? The pilot has multiple information sources, as I said before, right? The advantage is the information he gets is right and relevant only for this specific situation. He does not get any noise, any irrelevant information, because that would distract him. And as I said, could be possibly lethal. So the pilot is always acting as we call threat-centric. This is just the moment I'm concentrating on. The second advantage is the pilot was trained, his brain was trained to process this information instantly. That's why pilots are going through the training again and again, and are going through this loop and again. So they are trained to gather that information and process this as quickly as possible. And the third advantage is the pilot over time is building up that long-term knowledge. And that's what I said before, the feedback of an action goes into the past experiences, the lessons learned. So he can always refer back to that knowledge base. What did I do in the past in that situation? Was that right? What was the right decision, right? So he's combining all of that. Now, while this is certainly not easy, and as I said, I can't do it just because of my visual problems, but this is not easy, but it's doable. Now, when we compare that to cyber threat intel, we have a different situation. So we are also using multiple sources. When we are dealing with cyber threat intelligence, one single source will not be enough, will not give you enough data, what kind of threats, what kind of adversaries are out there. So you will need to use multiple sources. And some of our customers are using up to 15 different sources to get enough data. The problem we have is that around 95 to 98% of the data we are consuming in a specific company is not relevant for my company, is just noise. So we get distracted very much. We are not threat centric. The second problem is we don't have a central place to process threat intelligence, because today every tool is claiming, hey, I can make use of threat intelligence feeds. So the SIEM says, hey, give me the threat intel feed. The SOAR says is the firewall, even ticketing systems, case management system. They all claim, well, I can work with threat data. So companies are confused. Where do I do my threat intelligence management? Where do I do my central processing? Do I send it only to the SIEM or only to the SOAR, or do I send it simultaneously anywhere? Neither of that makes sense, and that's confusing, and that's why you're not getting value out of it. And the third problem is that we, unlike pilots, we don't have that central repository, and we don't have a long-term brain. And coming back to my my initial thoughts at the beginning, cyber threat intelligence is not just about IOCs. It is intelligence in general. The outcome of an analysis, the outcome of an incident is intelligence, and that needs to go into a central database. We just can't use information momentarily. We need to build up that long-term brain. And this is what we don't have. And this is clearly what's not happening. So what do we need? We need a platform to help us there. So what kind of features would a platform need? Just go through over a couple of things that we feel very important. Is the first thing is the platform must be able to ingest data from any source in any format. You don't need to take care about that, right? The second thing is the platform must be local. You must own the data, because you are the one that can decide what's relevant for me and what's not relevant for me, right? Storage of intelligence. As I said, a platform should not just act as an indicator database. It should include the lessons learned that we gathered from analysis, that we gathered from analyzing an incident. It should include a courses of action database, where what have we done in the past in that situation, so other teams or other people coming in can refer to that information database and act accordingly, right? And then obviously the basic enrichment of the data and so on is very important. But the most important thing, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second as well, is the prioritization. As I said, 98% on average of data that we are getting via feeds is noise for my company. So the platform must give you the ability to prioritize data based on an individually defined scoring matrix to filter out the high relevant threat data that you can work with, okay? So how would a platform look like this, and how would a platform look like to establish a holistic practice that is bringing these three parts, people, processes, and technology together on a single platform? Let's try now map this Ooda Loop that was concepted by Bob Boyd into the ThreatQuotient platform. So let's start again with the observation process. As we've learned, this is the information gathering phase. And this is exactly what we need to do. We need to have data. Data is the foundation. So the platform must be able to connect to all these data sources that you want to use, whether it's open source information, commercial providers, data from the MITRE ATT&CK framework, governments, sharing groups, ISACs. You don't need to take care about that. The platform must ingest the data and doing the basic threat intelligence management. And there are a couple of factors that are very important. And if you don't have a platform doing that for you, sometimes very time consuming, which is the normalization of data, the deduplication, the data aggregation, right? These are all things you don't want to care about that. You need a platform to get the data under control. The second phase, as you might remember, was the Orient Phase. And this would be, in our platform, the layer of analytics and prioritization. So this is the phase where we would correlate data, get more information out of it. And most importantly, this is the phase where you would apply your individually defined scoring matrix. What's important for me? And I'm always getting questions of what could influence the score. And a very simple example is always the geography. So if I get information, there's a threat that we have seen in a specific country, like Slovenia, for example, then I want to filter on that data because I'm a company in Slovenia. And if I have the attribute that's telling me that, I can use that for a scoring matrix. And now the information would bubble up and be highlighted. This is important for me, right? So this is the observation. This is the Orient phase. And now what we have after that prioritization phase is a subset of relevant and trusted and confident data. And this is the decision-making process, right? This is where you would define in the platform, what do I do with that subset of relevant threat data? Do I want to share that? Do I want to send it somewhere? Do I want to create any automation, the decision-making part? And you can do a lot in the platform, and we don't have the time to talk about that, but you can do a lot of things, and automation, getting faster, is obviously a very important part, okay? And now comes the act part. And the act part, from our perspective, is divided into 3 different parts. Number 1 is your technologies, your infrastructure. This is now the phase where we would connect to technologies that you are already using. Your SIEMs, your SOAR, your incident response platforms, firewall, etc., etc. The ThreatQuotient platform has over 100 integrations into different vendors. And now you can decide which tool in my infrastructure, would benefit from threat intelligence at that moment. So we are making the decision where to send data and for what reason. Is it a detection use case to send indicators to a SIEM platform, or is it to execute a playbook, starting an automation process in your SOAR, or sending IP addresses to the block list of your firewall? Whatever makes the best sense, you can decide that and you can automate it. So this is your technology that's acting. But there are 2 more things. The second one are your processes. Processes are based on data. So the platform must be able to adopt to various use cases, to various processes in incident response, threat hunting, spear phishing analysis, alert triage, and many more. And the last part, and from my perspective, the most important part, are the people. Because data and technology is great, but in a cyber threat intelligence practice, the biggest value are the people, your security teams. So the platform must be able to share information with different stakeholders, varying in content, frequency, and format, so everyone gets the right data at the right moment. Okay? So this is the Ooda Loop, but there's one part missing. Who remembers that? It's the feedback. It's the feedback. And this is the final and very important part of a platform to create to start that practice. The platform must be able to get the feedback from your tools, right? So when you send off an indicator to a SIEM and the SIEM detects it, this must come back as a feedback into the platform as new information, because having a relevant indicator is one thing. Having a detection of that indicator in my network is a new information. If you remember that Ooda Loop, that would change the whole process, right? So the platform is not only able to send out information, but also to monitor what's coming back from my sensors. And also from your processes. As I said, lesson learned, right? If you did a spear phishing analysis and investigated, we are under a targeted spear phishing campaign, this information must also be fed back in the central repository. But now we're not just dealing with indicators, we are dealing with any kind of intelligence that's created. Courses of actions, PDF documents, reports that were generated. And this is fed back and is acting in the platform as data that can be used by any of the security teams. And also anything that's coming from your teams, any kind of research, any kind of information they came across, the platform must be able to take that and keep that in its long-term repository. Great. I'm just looking at the clock. We're just coming up the 45 minutes, respectively 30 minutes. So a couple of things. First of all, I would like to thank you so much for. Sorry, what is that? There's a major typo in this. Well, apologies for that. So let me fix that. Oh, okay. Sorry for that. Not sure why that happened. So thank you very much for your participation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was valuable for you. Just two other things, because before we wrap up the session, is we have two great workshops on demand that you can watch in the platform. One is on the platform itself, how the ThreatQuotient threat intelligence platform works in a live environment. So anything I told you theoretically now, you will be able to see live or respectively in the on-demand webinar. And the second one is a great workshop we are doing together with our biggest technology partner, McAfee. So we will talk about a threat hunting use case using ThreatQuotient technology and McAfee technology together. So absolutely worthwhile. And the last thing is we have got great prizes to give away. So we'll see what's coming up tomorrow in the auction. But we also are giving away prizes in the form of nice bottles of rum at our booth. So don't miss to stop by our booth, have a chat with us, have a video conversation if you would like to hear more. And my closing remarks are, David, your opening remarks. We need to get faster in security. We need to become faster in detection and response. We need to become faster about learning about our enemies. So it's all about the speed. And this is what we want to give you with the platform. We want you to become the top guns in cyber defense. And with that, I feel the need for speed. Thank you.
Markus, well done. Brilliant. Thank you very much. I don't think the suit was wasted at all. I think it helped considerably to paint the picture of what you were trying to say. David has actually rushed off to do something else. I'm sure he's listening, but he can't respond to you immediately. I will add a teeny weeny little story that I know of, because a friend of mine was making a documentary with the RAF, the Royal Air Force in the UK, of a tornado pilot being trained, and a very young pilot, and the instructor gave us this story that he was flying along a valley in Wales, and they're not doing, or the trainee is not doing the observation properly, and he's not considering the speed with which he needs to react. And he didn't notice that at the end of the valley there was a significant cloud buildup. And at about 600 knots he flew straight into the cloud, and he hasn't got in his mind, so he hasn't got all the information to decide when to react. And he just froze and said to the instructor, "What do I do?" And the instructor said to him, "Decide or die." And they had about 15 seconds of this conversation before the instructor pulled the stick back and flew him out of the cloud. But it's interesting, you've got to know how long you have to make a decision, and that's true for your business too.
Absolutely. Well, great analogy. Thanks, Chris.
Markus, thank you.